Oh, hey, Mark. Alright, so I just watched a movie called Dinocroc. Dinocroc is a. Let's see, what year did this movie come out? I don't know. Surely 2000 something. 2005. It's a 2005 sci fi horror film directed by Kevin O'Neill. I think I got that right. Yeah. I didn't take any notes for this movie. I don't know why I just pluralized the singular movie that I just watched. Um, all right. So, Dino Croc follows the lead animal control person in her hunt for a three-legged dog for at least the first, I don't know, 15 minutes. We're hunting for a three-legged dog, maybe more. 20 minutes, I don't know. Like we're just looking for a three-legged dog named Lucky for the first 20-ish minutes of this movie. And then there's like a laboratory scene where someone dies, I guess. And gets eaten by baby dino sharks or Dinocrocs. I don't know why I keep wanting to call this movie Dino Shark. I wonder if I called it that when I opened up the video. I meant Dinocroc. Even when I was writing it down, because I keep a running list of horror movies that I've seen. Even when I was writing it down, I almost wrote Dino Shark, which is kind of funny. But, man, this movie's terrible. It really is. It has some really funny parts, though. Almost everything in this movie is very, very generic. The music, I don't know what it was with the music in this movie, but it was overly dramatic as shit. Like, it really wanted you to know that these events were dramatic. Everything in this movie, super dramatic. Well, the music was overly dramatic anyway. Not like all the events in the movie. Most of the acting was pretty horrendous, which is interesting because it actually, speaking of the acting, it has a couple of not memorable faces. They're not memorable in this movie, really, but a couple of recognizable faces, which is the general from Austin Powers, which is funny, but also Hoffman from the Saw movies, which is kind of crazy. He's Australian in this movie. I don't know if he's Australian in real life. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I can't spot a fake accent or a bad accent or whatever. So I mean, if it was really bad, I'd be able to tell. But if it's bad, then it's moderately bad because I couldn't tell if he was Australian or not genuinely. But yeah, it was interesting seeing him because like he pops up on screen and first thing in your head is that fucking Hoffman? Sure enough, it is Hoffman from the Saw movies. So, that was at least interesting to watch. His character was probably the most entertaining on screen. Um, One huge plus that this movie has going for it, which I'm just going to say right off the bat, as this is a spoiler review, as all of these are, review, discussion, whatever you want to call them. They're my opinion. Um, but one huge plus right off the bat, so I don't like children in movies usually. Um, well, I don't want to say usually, but in low budget films, children tend to be a lot more annoying because their performances are dog shit most of the time. Um, in higher budget movies, it's not as much of an issue because they're higher budget. Like, they can afford better actors. This child was pretty horrendous. And, you know, he wasn't horrendous in like a funny over the top way. He was horrendous in like a this is still a boring performance way, which realistically is how all of the actors are in this movie. I'm only mentioning it for the child specifically because the movie takes a direction which I was really happy about. It kills off the child. This movie kills off a child, which I was surprised as fuck about, because I'm being entirely honest, when I initially saw this scene where the kid rides out into the night to find his dog Lucky because he overheard the adults talking about how the dog's in the nature preserve somewhere, and he goes off to find the dog in the nature preserve, and the Dinocroc, which, by the way, this Dinocroc thing, just let me interject, I don't know. Let me just put this right in the middle of my commending this movie for killing off a child. The Dinocroc in this movie looked like some kind of weird monstrosity mix of a crocodile and the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3. So, you know, I'm not too mad at it. But it was a CGI monstrosity, and it looked terrible. But I expected that out of this movie. I understood that was going to be the type of thing this movie was. I was expecting something of like Sci-Fi Channel quality. I wanted a stupid-looking creature to eat people, and that's what I got. But anyway, when I originally saw this scene, he goes out into the night to find his dog. And I thought, okay, is he gonna die? And then he initially gets away from the Dinocroc. And the thing's like chewing up his bicycle or whatever. And I went, okay, so this movie just set a precedent for what it's not gonna do. This movie is not going to kill off that kid. Because I mean, it just, like, it just told me without telling me that it's just not gonna do it. It is just not gonna kill off this kid. This whole movie is gonna follow this kid, and there's gonna be some stupid plot near the end of the movie where the kid's gonna help in destroying this thing or capturing this thing or whatever. I was thinking it was about to be a really stupid movie. Don't get me wrong, it's stupid. There's the cover art to prove it. But it doesn't end up being as stupid because after the kid escapes, he escapes to this house. Or it's not really a house, it's like a shack out on the lake, out on the bayou. I don't know what you call those things. A shack. That's the only word I can think of for it. But it starts slamming itself against the floor, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, whatever. I really don't care. I can't bring myself to care about this because I know that kid's not gonna die. And then the slamming stops, and the kid's standing there, and I'm like, okay, now someone's gonna come rescue him or something. Some stupid shit's about to happen that's gonna it's just gonna chap my khakis. And then, out of nowhere, this thing breaks through the floor and engulfs this child's entire body in its mouth. Everything up to the neck, and it chomps down and it decapitates him. That was awesome. It didn't look great, of course, like it's stupid CGI shit, but that's an awesome way to kill off a kid in your movie. I mean, if you're gonna kill off a kid, go big or go home. You know what I mean? This movie went big. It decapitated him by consuming the rest of his body. That's crazy awesome. Speaking of crazy awesome deaths, there's another death in this movie. That's like the main plus of this movie, are the few deaths it actually has in it are really amusing. There's another death in this movie. This was the first death. where this guy's like, uh, he's leaning over. This was after uh, it's revealed that this guy has Lucky, and he was going to use him as bait to bait out the Dinocroc. And he's leaning over the dock after the dog had run away because he heard something. And the thing just pops up out of the water and eats everything except for his legs. And his legs are just sitting there on the dock. They didn't even move. Yeah, that was awesome. An issue I have with this movie, though, this is one of, I mean, of course, among all of the other issues I have with this movie, things like the actors are generic, the soundtrack is weirdly over dramatic for how derpy the CGI effects and the acting and just everything is. But like my main substantive complaint, I like how I say substantive as though like this is the only complaint that matters. All the other complaints are secondary. This one matters, damn it. And that is, Lucky is, he's never found. Like, they find him early on in the movie, this little three-legged dog. They find him early on in the movie, and then they go running after him. And then, I guess, Lucky, like, jumps up and, like, knocks the guy over into the water. And then he tries to have the woman help him out of the water, and he pulls her into the water, and they start like playing in the water like a couple of children. they don't go after the dog. He's a three-legged dog. I think you can catch him. I think so. I think you can get him. But no. Instead, you let him wander off, and then the guy comes in. Of course, the old Dino Shark motherfucker. See, Dino Shark. Why is it a Dino Shark? I don't know. There is another movie called Dino Shark, but that's not this movie. Then the whole Dinocroc plot is introduced. As far as our doctor, I forgot the guy's name. Fuck off if you think I remembered that guy's name. He's just a random doctor. No one cares. But, like, the doctor comes in on the speedboat, which, and he starts shooting at the Dinocroc. And that was another issue I had. Like, I facepalmed so hard in that scene. Because he starts shooting at the Dinocroc, and they're acting like he's shooting at them, but he's clearly not. Like, he's turned around and he's shooting out at the water. He's shooting at something in the water. You can tell. So, and then immediately after, like, a few shots into him shooting at the water with his rifle, the guy's like, I'm gonna try to take him down. And he grabs a branch and he smacks him over the head and knocks him out. Why? Why? Please, let me in on your thoughts. No? Okay. Never mind. That's cool. Alright. Knocking out random scientist dudes. Sick. But, yeah, Lucky never gets found. Like, at all in the movie. After that, like, it's just like they completely forgot that he existed. I didn't. You're not forgotten to me, Lucky. Okay? Three-legged dog lives matter. Something I also like about this movie, actually, is, they don't kill any dogs. Like, no dogs die in this movie. Which is crazy to think about, because there is literally a scene towards the end of the movie where they're using a bunch of pound dogs for bait, and one of our main protagonists goes and, well, actually both of our main protagonists go and, like, are releasing all the dogs from the chains that they have them on to lure in the Dinocroc. Not one dog dies. And you know what? I consider that a win. 100%. Other than probably Lucky. Lucky's out there somewhere dead. Probably in the Dinocroc's digestive system. Anyway. And then they lure the Dinocroc into a tunnel where I guess they load it up with carbon monoxide. I think that's what I'm given to believe. They think it's dead. I don't know how it's not dead, because it was lying in that tunnel just breathing it all in for like 5 minutes to 10 minutes after it had collapsed. And they leave the scene, and you think it's a happy ending. God, this shit is so stupid. Alright, so it wakes up and it eats the head woman of the Jericho Corporation, which is the corporation that let this thing get out and was denying any knowledge of its existence, by the way, up until then, which is another huge issue. She was trying to do like some kind of, I don't know if it was like a press release or what, like she was trying to report on it to assure the public that Jericho had no knowledge of it or whatever. That was earlier in the movie, but at the end of the movie, she's like, yeah, we knew all along, and we were helping the police in any way possible. It's like, you don't think that you on the record earlier can be quoted and shown up against you on the record now? By the way, she's catching charges of some kind, right? This sheriff seems weirdly chill about the fact that she just strolls in there. He's like, oh, yeah, there she is. There's the lady that unleashed the Dinocroc and denied knowing about its existence. Neato. There she is, boys. Yeah, let her go tape in front of the Dinocroc. Anyway, that aside, that just huge plot hole. Because they just act like they aren't going to do jack shit about this. They aren't planning on pursuing any kind of legal action against this company or against her, apparently, because no one says anything. Maybe behind the scenes somewhere, later down in the timeline of this movie, the cop would have been like, hey, I'm taking your ass to court, and you're going to jail. And your company's being fined, whatever. Because none of that happens in the movie. But, the sheriff doesn't get a chance to, because the Dinocroc wakes up and it eats her. And actually, it looks super amusing, because this giant CGI monstrosity just strolls out of the tunnel with this lady hanging out of its mouth, and her legs and arms are just limp hanging out of the sides of its mouth and the front of its mouth. It looks ridiculous, but it's definitely amusing. And then we get our main protagonist, our male main protagonist, holding this thing back with a blowtorch as the train's coming. By the way, that was the third train that looked identical to that first train that came by in like the last 20 minutes or so, maybe even less. That is a very busy track, let me tell you what, because that was a lot of trains that came through on that track. And he's just slowly backing up, and then of course they have to draw it out as long as they can to just juice all the tension they can out of you, which doesn't work, by the way, because you don't give a shit. Matter of fact, I was like, do it. Eat him, Dinocroc. Just do it. Put him out of his misery and put me out of mine. Just end the movie with you eating him, because you don't give a shit. Who gives a shit about the protagonists in Dinocroc? I don't. The most likable characters in Dinocroc are the dogs, and that's because they're dogs and I love dogs. But anyway, they wait till the last possible second, and the guy like leaps in front of a train, and he makes it. And then the Dinocroc tries to come after him. Dinocroc gets smacked with the train. I just kind of figured it was dead at that point, like it had been flattened, just completely torn up by the train. But then it cuts. Well, it doesn't cut. It shows him grab a bar, and at first I thought he was doing it for like defense in case the thing was still alive, and I'm like, what do you think a metal bar is gonna do? You just hit it with a train. Like, if it's not dead at this point, you better start praying to some kind of higher power. Because you loaded it up with carbon monoxide and hit it with a train. I don't think a metal pipe is gonna do much, my dude. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I really don't. But then we see the Dinocroc just kind of laying down. Just kind of laying down next to the track. And as best I can tell, because they didn't show it, it kind of just looks like our main protagonist just kind of walks up to him, says, "This is for my brother," or whatever. He says, "This is for insert child who got decapitated earlier's name here." And I think they were trying to imply that he impaled the bar into its eye or something. Because that's the only thing that makes sense. Because what it ends up looking like is he just smacks it in the head. And it dies. Like, it has like kind of a zoomed out shot of it. And that's what it looks like. It looks like he just smacks it in the head. And it just dies. It just stops breathing. So that's stupid. Then, happily ever after, happy ending, blah, 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 and then cut to shot of road, ominous music starts playing, and, oh, big surprise, Dinocroc's not dead, or there's another Dinocroc, or something like that. It's just a shot of a CGI monstrosity, Dinocroc, walking across the road, minding its own business. So, I was way happier during this review than I should have been, because this was a really bad movie, and I think I discussed more things I like about this movie than things I didn't, but I can assure you that watching the film, it was incredibly boring. And I don't say things like, I don't harp on things like, yeah, it was such a boring movie, the pacing sucked, this and that, and the third thing. Because if I tell you it's a boring movie, I think you understand what that means. So at that point, I think I'm good to nitpick and just kind of talk about funny things that happened in the movie. So understand it was incredibly boring. And I just kind of talked about some of the highlights of the movie that I found amusing or I found completely insane and just out there and stupid. Lots of plot holes in this one. So understand that I probably had more fun recording this review than I actually had watching the movie, if I'm being entirely honest. But I tell you what, I don't hate it. I don't hate it by any means. I feel like this would actually be kind of a fun movie. Like if you had a kid that was getting into horror movies, or like that you wanted to start showing horror movies to, but you didn't really want to show them anything too violent. I think Dinocroc would be a good movie to introduce him to, because it's got the horrible effects and everything, so it provides that layer of fantasy, that layer of fiction. That I think would be good for that. But other than that, this movie is utterly terrible. It has a few fun parts, a few funny parts, and that's really what redeems this movie. Other than the fact, like I said, Hoffman from Saw is in this movie, and the General from Austin Powers. They were kind of fun to see in this movie. It's like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? So at the end of the day, guys, I think my rating for this one is gonna be about a 4 out of 10. Not a very good movie. I don't necessarily recommend checking it out, but if you must see Dino Shark, or if you have like a copy of Dino Shark laying around that you just haven't gotten around to watching, like I actually had, which is why I watched it tonight. But then, I mean, it'll pass by an hour and a half or so, you know. It passes time. So, I think that's going to be it for this one, guys. I will catch you guys on the next one.